Okay, welcome everyone. Welcome back to the Mind Matters series at Mind and Life Europe. We're really glad to see so many old friends and new friends in the Zoom room, and welcome as well to those who are following us on the YouTube live streaming. This is, as you know, the fourth and final talk of the Mind Matters series of 2025. And for those who have been following this series, you may know that the Mind Matters series, is inflected each year with a certain theme or set of questions. And this year is devoted to arts and aesthetics in the Enactive Fold, as we're calling it here at Mind and Life Europe. And this is a year in which we are turning our attention to the deeply embedded affinities between artistic process and praxis, and our philosophical and scientific work, which is grounded very much in the enactive approach developed by Francisco Varela. And this evening, it is our delight and honor to welcome back a dear friend of Mind and Life Europe's, Matthieu Ricard, to celebrate the release of his most recent book of photography, Lumière, which was just out in September of this year, and reflect together on what we might call the deep entanglement of the contemplative life and the life of artistic expression. So I'd like to introduce Matthieu for those of you who may be newer to his work, but I'm actually pretty sure that most of you know his work and his presence quite well. It was none other than Henri Cartier-Bresson who, in an introduction to Matthieu's first book of photography, Journey to Enlightenment, said, and I quote, "Matthieu's spiritual life and his camera are one, and from this spring these images, fleeting yet eternal." And I think that holds true for the arc of Matthieu's entire career in photography, and a nice incipit or introduction to this evening's presentation on his latest book of photography. So Matthieu Ricard, as many of you know, is a Buddhist monk at the Shechen Monastery in Nepal. He received a PhD in cellular genetics at the Institut Pasteur in France under Nobel laureate François Jacob. He has lived in the Himalayas since 1972, studying with Khyentse Rinpoche and Dilgo Khyentse Rinpoche, two highly respected Tibetan spiritual masters. Since 1989, he has served as French interpreter for His Holiness the Dalai Lama. He is the author of many books, known to many of you, I'm sure. They include The Monk and the Philosopher from 1997, The Quantum and the Lotus from 2000, Happiness, A Guide to Developing Life's Most Important Skill, 2003, and Altruism, The Power of Compassion to Change Yourself and the World from 2013. He has also translated several books from Tibetan, including The Life of Shapkar from 2001 and The Heart of Compassion from 2007. He donates all the proceeds from his books and much of his time to 140 humanitarian projects in Tibet, Nepal, and India through his charitable association, Karuna Shechen. And so with that, we'd like to welcome you back, Matthieu Ricard. Thank you so much for joining us and for sharing some of your light with us this evening and walking us through this latest book of photography called Lumière.
Thank you so much. And I don't see everyone, but on the screen which I see a few old friends, Gabor, Amy, and John. It's wonderful to be back with a Mind and Life family. I never left my heart, but as I'm getting pretty old guy now, I'm going to be 80 very soon. So in a way, I'm not being too active, trying to focus on translation, on practicing, and my favorite way of getting distracted, which is photography. So, I did about 15 books, but still until recently, whenever I do a book of photography, there's of course little text with it, and the people come and say, "Oh, that's wonderful, I saw your book of photography, but who did the photos?" So I don't think I fit the profile. And so my late publisher, now I have a new one, but he passed away. I thought this was cannot be. So I was having dinner with some of his friends at his home, and there was one of my books called Motionless Journey, and he showed to his host, to his friends, and said, "That's the latest book of Matthieu," and they look at it and say, "Oh, nice, but who did the photography?" And even one exhibition, I did a big print, and then I wrote some quotes on the bottom. And one lady in the city, oh, I saw the thing where you wrote those quotes, but who did the photo? So I don't have the karma, I guess. But anyway, so this book on light is a sort of, in the skating, you have imposed figure and free exercise, freestyle. So, photos, graphein in Greek means writing, drawing, painting with light. So I thought that's a good theme, a good subject. So it's like freestyle, just trying to match colors. And so I'm going to share my screen if I succeed in doing so. Well, no. What happens? Ooh la la, I lost everything.
We can see your screen.
You can see my screen, so I don't see it anymore. Oh, yes, now I see it. So I had a very beautiful cover with the ice cave in Iceland and a little something, and then the wonderful lady who does the layout said nothing better than simplicity. So I sensed that she was going to try that photo. I said that's not going to work, and in the end it works very well. So the text is actually both in English and French, although it doesn't appear on the cover. It's not a big text. And so anyone interested in reading it, you can find it. So the idea was first I tried to explore, every possible type of light, underground light, mineral light. So I went in caves and things like that. Then the light of the earth, light of water, and so the light of plants and animals, light of the heart, portraits, and light of spiritual light, spiritual master, then going up, light of the mountains, light of the sky. And my dear layout person said it's very boring. So he said, well, how would you speak about photography and colors? So I said, well, in Buddhism, we have this symbolism of 5 colors. I mean, we say from the absolute dimension, which is called Dharmakaya, the absolute dimension of Buddhahood, which is beyond concept, without description, which is the absolute level of Buddhahood. When it first sort of comes out something, it says it radiates 5 color lights, which represent 5 aspects of enlightenment or wisdom. And they also happen to be the transformation or the pure aspect of 5 mental toxins or afflictive mental state, which are, hatred and sort of strong craving, lack of discernment, ignorance, delusion, and then pride, vanity, and then jealousy or envy. Of course, those 5 ones are just the tip of the iceberg, because we speak of 84,000 afflictive mental states. There's actually no list of them, but it just shows how diverse delusion can take shape in our mind. And so when you might have seen some picture of mandalas from the Tibetan tradition, and the 5 colors are shown. The east is white, the south is yellow, the west is red, and the north is green, and the center is blue, and they symbolize those 5 wisdom. To give you an example, the transformation of envy or jealousy is called the mirror-like wisdom, because when we see that every sentient being has the Buddha nature, so it's like the reflection in a mirror of our own Buddha nature, there's no difference. How can we have contempt? How can we feel superior in any way? And all those 5 poisons sort of, create suffering in the end for ourselves and other sentient beings, obviously, hatred being the most dramatic one. And unfortunately, we can see in our days the devastating effect of hatred that came in a few people's mind and then spread through them, because they are in power, to thousands and millions of people. Just it all started with some thoughts of hatred, isn't it? Otherwise, those things will not happen. So to see how we can be overwhelmed by hatred and the tragic consequences of that, show how crucial it would be to transform them. And in the Shantideva's famous Bodhicharyavatara, the way of the Bodhisattva, he said, usually, someone eat you with a stick. No one will get angry at the stick. We get angry at the person. But if we think carefully, the person is like a stick in the in the hands, we may say, of hatred, of greed, of cruelty, of indifference. So the only real enemy is hatred itself. It's all those poison that poison our life and the life of others. So then, through that, I developed the idea of structuring the book on the 5 colors and also the 5 colors of the rainbow. And so it was more like a free exercise, trying to match the Buddhist concept linked with the colors. And also the colors are linked with different elements. Like this, of course, space is blue, and the earth is yellow, and the fire is red, and the wind is green, and the water is white, the earth is yellow. So we can play with all those symbolism just for fun in a way, to put those colors together in a sort of chromatic symphony. So that's what I try to do. So I'm not going to show you the book itself, but to some of the photos, some of them from the book and some more ancient, to try to share this idea. And also, why doing photography in my case? I started when I was 13 years old. Because my mother was a painter, my father was a writer. I don't know how to draw, and I don't write very well, so photography was an obvious way of doing something. And my family used to say, don't count on him for family photos. I usually would take reflection in little puddle or in the glass, and so I was always interested in light, which is, of course, what photography is made of. So painters paint with material, with the solid substances on the canvas, and we see the paintings because of the light that's reflecting upon them. And of course, it takes years and years to master the art of becoming a painter. And some people say, well, you are not a painter. It takes 30 years to become a painter, and you just have to click on the camera. So one of the Cartier-Bresson scenographer who did all his exhibitions said, well, the problem with photography is that it's very easy to click, but that's what makes it difficult, because actually it also takes a whole life to educate you the way you look at it. And Henri David Thoreau used to say, it's not what you are just seeing or looking at that, but what you really see. And Cartier-Bresson used to say also, I don't take photos, they take me. So at some point you start seeing things more sort of acutely, and sometimes there's something that jumps in your face. The cover of this book, actually I took from a window while flying from Bangkok to Kathmandu. And so everything is fleeting, of course, light especially never stay the same. After 30 seconds, this light would have changed. On top of that, the plane was moving 900 kilometers per hour. So obviously, there was very little time. So painters paint with material, and the photographer paint with light and with time. And we can have long exposure to catch sort of a whirling movement, or fast, instantaneous to catch a flying sort of dancer or something. So it's a pretty different approach, but in a way, yes, it's a way of expressing ourselves. So let me try to, no, I've got to change okay, now. So if I was to keep one photograph from my 65 years of photography, I would keep this photograph of Kangyu Rinpoche, my first teacher, whom I met in 1967. And as you mentioned, after going back and forth 7 times in the summer from Pasteur Institute to Darjeeling in India, And the last time in end of 72, I took a one-way ticket. So this is a spiritual master whom with Diego Kenzelemoshe, I will show some image later, who inspired my whole life, every moment of my life as much as possible when I'm not distracted. And so I owe everything. I can die without regret because of the great fortune of having met such teacher. I certainly was not up to the task, but everything sort of wholesome, the little bit which I could develop, the few steps I could make in the right direction, I truly owe to their kindness, to their teachings, to their wisdom, to their compassion. So that's why I can die in peace now, for sure. And as an anecdote, I just got a message from Eve Ekman and our most dear friend Paul. Apparently, he's living his last days or month. And I may share an anecdote about this photograph. When I show it to Paul, Paul is one of the world specialists on the facial emotions. I did a book called 108 Smiles, just in French, a photo book. And Paul used to distinguish 18 different kinds of smile. And the only totally genuine smile, which is not a smirky smile or a sad smile or whatever, is called the Duchenne smile. It was a French scientist from the, I think, the end of 19th century who used to put electrodes on people's face to make them take different emotion and stimulate some muscles. And the Duchenne smile is called the genuine smile, and at that time it was opposed to the Pan Am smiles. Pan Am don't exist anymore because there was some advertisement of some nice-looking lady or guy with a smiling from the mouth and not smiling from the heart. So when Paul saw that image, you can try yourself. He says, "I've never seen that." I say, "What?" He said, "Look, he hide the eyes and only show the mouth. You can try yourself on your screen." And he said, "Look, the mouth is not smiling according to my definition of smile." And then he hid the mouth and he said, "The eyes only have the perfect Duchenne smile, which is completely the reverse of the Pan Am smile." So yes, I never thought of that, but it shows that it is the smile of love, compassion, wisdom, fathomless kindness. So yes, if I had to leave a kind of legacy, it will be that photo. Then to what happens? Yes. Now this book is based on the 5 colors and the 5 wisdoms. So started with white. So we just, of course, white is the mixture of all the colors of the rainbow, but it's also the east, which is the transformation of anger into the wisdom of great sameness, because then we are all the same in having the Buddha nature. How can we feel animosity to anyone? And so we start with white, and it's also, I use photos from different parts of the world. He's flying over Yukon in North Canada, and here the Makalu in Nepal. When you fly from Bhutan to Kathmandu, you come very close all along the Himalayan range. And because I've lived a long time in Bhutan, I could sometimes photograph from the cockpit. So it's you have clean windows and quite flat, so it's wonderful to take photos. And so also trying to blend, so this is a monk in our monastery with the incense sort of pot, and he's blowing on the incense. And I saw that across the temple, and I ran there was some good light over it. So here you see the smoke. Of course, it's not immaterial, but it's not solid. You can push your hand through, nothing to grasp, but you see the movement of the smoke. So I try to match that with something which is very powerful, but has some kind of patterns, and also in the same colors, which is a 70-meter high waterfall in Iceland of incredible power. So as you can see, we match the shape, but it's a quite different in terms of what it is. And then this Arctic petrel, I forgot the name in English, crossing a waterfall while snow is falling. So try to play with movement, with colors, and then this waterfall. So here you can see how the photographer paints with time, because as his matter is light and time, because here there's a pause so that you see the running movement of the water. If it was an instantaneous photo, you will not see this kind of feeling of a thread going on. So that's what we can do, yes. And then also keeping on white, we have some blue-footed boobies in Mexico, in Baja California, on a rock in the Sea of Cortez. And then, 1 year I was going to accompany a friend, photographer friend, to the Lake Baikal. I was fascinated by the shape in the ice there. And then that was the day that the Ukraine war started. Actually, the first day the day we were going to fly, that was the first day that they closed the airspace. So we would have been stuck there and have to go to the Trans-Siberian to Mongolia or something to come back to France. So then I was there in the winter taking care of my mother. So I photographed the Baikal in a small puddle of ice outside my mother's house. And then on a different scale, still ice, but taken from very high, flying over Yukon on the lake. So here you see the main, so it's a bit abstract also, you don't know the scale. It could be a puddle. So that's also playing with the fractals. Fractals are motifs which reproduce themselves almost identically at different scales, from a very, very small detail to something very vast. So you would not know whether it's a small puddle of water or a huge lake taken from the space, from sky. So here you see the center, the ice is already formed. Then there is water, which shows a little bit black here, and then this ice in formation that is gray. So you get all the shades and sort of the beauty of the shapes. And then you go again in macrocosmos, so small, with the ice on leaves, and then a leaf frozen in a piece of ice, and then some two monks sitting on the frozen lake in the winter at 4,000 meters of altitude in February in eastern Tibet. It's minus 25 outside. So playing with all the circumstances. And then it seems it's taken from the sky, but in fact it's from my hermitage in Nepal. And my dear friend John Kabat-Zinn, who is watching, came to that hermitage. So sometimes you get this magic sort of moment where the mountains come through a hole in the clouds, mostly in the monsoon time. And then, it's like, I don't know where you are, what altitude, are you flying or just on the earth? So playing with this ambiguity and beauty. And so now we move to yellow. So this is a sunset in Tibet near Mount Kailash. Again, it's about 4,000 meters, 12,000 feet. And so we are so high that the clouds are touching the earth. So I will show 3 photos which almost happen as magical moments at half a minute interval. So first, we were driving there to go to the Mount Kailash and Lake Manasarova, and I saw that extraordinary light. So I said, let's stop, and came out and took a photo. And then a gift came the next moment. Horses and a horseman came. So that was about a minute later. And to show how fast things change, the next 2 minutes, then the light sort of dimmed, but still was the last sort of fire of the sunset, again nearby in the same place, within a few minutes. So you see, you get very different feelings and atmosphere, and show how the light is ephemeral. So when we say that photography freezes things in time, it's not that we are freezing anything. It's just like we sort of give to that moment a source of inspiration that can last longer than the very moment that we were spectator of. And I think for me, photography has two meanings. One is to share the beauty of the world, the beauty of human beings, the beauty of human nature. Because you see, I was there, and I can't remember that. Of course, memory might fade over time, but it's still very pregnant in my heart. But when you are, suppose you are alone there and you want your friends and whoever else to share that, to see that beauty, to benefit from that beauty, to be inspired by that beauty. So it's all about sharing. It's not about trying to stupidly freeze the present moment. And actually, I can tell you an anecdote about Henri Cartier-Bresson. In 1991, he came to meet the Dalai Lama as His Holiness was teaching in south of France to 10,000 people. So at lunchtime, I knew Henri since I'm 18 years old. So I took him to His Holiness and I said, you know, this is a very, very respected photographer. Some people call him the eye of the century. So His Holiness, you know, politely asked Henri, so what makes a special photography? Or so Henri spoke of the decisive moment, which is his famous formula about being in the present moment when you take the photo. So His Holiness, who is a very good debater, look at Henri, which also was a quite very, I know how to say, he was a very good debater himself. So he said, well, you are never in the present moment. So Henri was a bit surprised. He said, because when you take the photo, you project yourself in the future. I mean, meaning if there's no film in the camera, you will not take. So you take it for a future result, which is the slide or the photograph, or you're going to print, or you're going to show in the future. And when you look at the photo, printed or whatever, then you go back to the past because so you're never in the present moment. So I didn't know what to say. So it's not about freezing the time. It's about paying an homage to something that was fleeting. And actually, it should actually reflect even more the feeling of impermanence, because we know that those things are ephemeral, are fleeting. So one way is to share the beauty of the world. Well, this is taken from the balcony of my hermitage in Namo Buddha in Nepal. So sharing the beauty, what does that mean? You have a feeling of awe. You know, one of Paul Ekman's students, Dashiell Keltner, studied awe. When you feel awe or wonderment, something bigger than yourself. Actually, he did a strange experiment. He asked people to draw themselves in a photo of a busy city and write me on the photo. So in the city, they draw themselves quite big and they write me quite big as well. When you show them a vast landscape, they draw themselves very small and they wrote a small me. So there's something bigger than oneself. There's some kind of awareness of the interdependence of all things. And when you are in awe or wonderment about the beauty of nature, then of course you are going to respect that. If you are in wonderment about a fresh flower, the next moment you are not going to trample it down. So you respect it. If you respect something like our nature, you know, ecology means home, our home in Greek. So it's not the environment as if we were separate from it. No, human beings, some people say we have, man has extracted himself from nature. This is as if we could extract ourselves from our own body. No, we cannot extract ourselves from interdependence. Everything is interdependent. So then if we realize that, and if we are in awe or amazement seeing the beauty of the world, then we will respect it and we will be concerned by its fate, and then this can lead us to action to protect it. So that's one way, a constructive way to inspire us to protect that. And then the other aspect, which I try to show in photography, is to become aware of the basic goodness of human beings. Of course, we can become psychopaths, mass murderer, and there are few going around these days. But nevertheless, as a whole, as Nelson Mandela said about his jailers after 30 years of jail, if you look deep, deep within, you will always find something good in human beings. So that's we need to bring at the surface. In Buddhism, we say there's the Buddha nature, which is like a piece of gold. It can be falling in the mud or even worse, in a septic tank. But when you take out the gold and just wash it and polish it, the gold was not worse in the septic tank. It's not become better now that you wash it and show it and let it shine. The gold never changed no matter what, but we brought it at the surface. So to give a better idea about human nature and to inspire about realizing our common humanity, I think is more than ever needed, because we tend to fall into the wicked world syndrome, that basically man is bad and everything is going to go wrong. And, if you look at the news, I think the evolution has equipped us to react emotionally to something that is potentially dangerous. If we have a ride in a train or if you go to a theater, and when you come out, you don't congratulate yourself that people didn't start fighting or sort of punching each other. But if someone do that, then you will speak about it for 15 days. Because what is deviant, what is barbarian, what is extreme, what is not, or the banality of goodness, the fact that most of the time, most of 8 billion human beings behave decently with each other, that we don't see it because that's our default mode. And when it's not that, when some barbarian acts happen, then of course we pay extreme attention, because something that is potentially dangerous, we need to pay attention. But the deformation of that is then we only pay attention to bad news. I remember having been called to some French TV, and they said, we'll ask you to comment the 5 headlines of the news. And I'd say, please, can you show me? And then I look at it, I say, don't we have a good news? There's so many good news in the world. But the good news are not news, it seems so. So the idea, I know it's a decision I made, because I respect fully of many friends who are war photographers who show famine and terrible things, and we need that for awakening our consciousness. At the same time, we may fall in despair about losing any hope about human nature. So I try just to do the opposite at my modest contribution. So yes, magic moment is another one. I was coming back from Nepal and taking off from Istanbul. And again, from the window of the plane, I saw this scene that would probably last 2-3 seconds. I just had the time to quickly take this image, and then it was gone. Or else, sitting outside above my hermitage, about 100 meters above the hermitage, looking at the Himalayas one early morning when still the mist is there, and so those are times that happens once every 15 days. So when I did this book, Motionless Journey, I did what no photographer, including myself, could do, is sitting on my bum, waiting for the light. But I was not waiting for anything. I was just there. So whenever there was something like that, I just had to get the camera and take a photo, and forget it for the next 15 days. So when you have time, then those magic moments start to accumulate, and at the end, there's something you can share. So the same place, another day. Or again, from the window of a plane flying over the Atlantic, or flying over the Amnimachen mountain in Golok in eastern Tibet. And that mountain looks nice from the top, but I went round. Oh, that was where the 2 monks were sitting on the frozen lake. So there's an interesting story about this mountain. During the Second World War, there was a British DC-3 pilot who was flying over Tibet. And the English news were always asking him for updates, for news, for interesting things. And he was getting fed up with all those requests. So he flew nearby this mountain, and he said that, I was flying at 6,000 meters, and this was clearly 3,000 meters above my head. So he said, this mountain is higher than the Everest. So It must be 9,000 meters. So for a number of years, it was just a joke. Actually, the DC-3 can't fly that high. So anyway, that thing was believed to be true for about 10, 15 years until they found it was a joke and the Everest was the highest mountain. Nevertheless, it's like 6,000 plus, and I went round it on foot. It takes 5 days, and you know, it's beautiful and pretty tough. But that time I had the chance to take it from the window of a plane. And so again, we are in the sort of yellowish, brownish, and this is in Iceland, and you see this beautiful landscape made of rhyolites. There are volcanic sort of stones, and you can see those two little people that give the scale of this incredible mineral beauty. This is in Turkey, in Cappadocia. There's incredible landscapes, you know, with magic lights also. And then, you know, trying to play with shapes, with the colors. And one day I was coming out of my mother's house. There are a few steps, wooden steps. And then I saw that, you know, that's what when you learn how to see things in a way. That was between two steps, and this was these dewdrops on the sort of spider web, and it just jumped in my face, and I went to get my camera. I took the photo. So basically, with time, looking at others' photographers' work, getting inspired by them, then you start to see better things. They really jump in your face and say, oh, there is a photo there to be taken. And so it could be anything, like this is in Tibet again, or in Cappadocia again. So this is in very high in Bhutan, 5,000 meters, the yearly Highlander Festival. So yes, so trying to share this beauty, and then the spiritual photography. You know, when you photograph great teachers like Khyentse Rinpoche, well, you cannot do just like snapping a photo. There's something that you don't feel to take a photo because you want to just be there and fully, you know, fill yourself with the incredible uniqueness of that moment, the blessing of the presence of the teacher, which also you can see is overwhelming gaze. You know, you don't feel to snap a photo like a, you know, like a paparazzi or lamarazzi in that case. So you have to approach that with utmost respect. And I took many, many photos of my teacher, and I'm very grateful because now I can share that. You know, imagine, it would be so nice to see the face of Socrates or Saint Francois of Assisi. So we have them for those teachers. At the same time, you know, I must say that Khyentse Rinpoche never posed for the. He doesn't care about we photograph. He let me always photograph him. Sometimes he would make some kind of faces and joke to me, but he did not posing as someone who say, well, what is my best profile, you know, like this, like this. So not at all, totally unconcerned, of course. There's why should he be concerned after all? And then, but at the same time, for us, we have to be almost invisible and then take that photo to share it with others. And so again, I'm so grateful that I could take those photos and share it with the world. You know, because it's so precious now that most of those teachers passed away. You know, if I look at Arnaud Desjardins' movie, it is thanks to Arnaud Desjardins, which I saw documentaries. It's called The Message of the Tibetan Part 1 or 2. You can see that on YouTube. That in 96 I saw that, and then I decided to go to the West because there was at one point there was about 30 faces of great master looking straight at the camera, silent. Some hermits, some great masters like the Dalai Lama and Khyentse Rinpoche. And I thought, how? Here, there are, again, 30 Socrates, 30 Saint Francis of Assisi living now in our time. I'm going there no matter what. So I think the power of such photography with the writings of those teachers, which I try to translate also, is sort of the most powerful legacy we have to get a glimpse of what a spiritual master is, who has nothing to lose, nothing to gain, to have a few more students, but everything to share, everything to give, And the only hope is the student will progress from delusion to wisdom, from being addicted to the cause of suffering to be free from suffering. And so I think I'm so glad that I could take those images. This is my first teacher again, Kangyo Rinpoche, and some other hermit from India, Tashijong. He was a scribe living in Kangyo Rinpoche's home, copying text, and a monk in Tibet. So try also to catch up. This was a retreat and coming out after 6 years of retreat in session in Tibet. So he looks pretty happy. You don't know because he did 6 years retreat or because he's finally out of 6 years retreat. But I know him quite well, and he's pretty happy all the time, and it's certainly due to his practice. And a lady I photographed, I think in 1968 in Darjeeling. So now she must have aged like me. I don't know who is she. I don't know how to find her. I hope she's alive. But there's also this beautiful gaze. You know, Paul Valéry, the French poet, said that the eye is the window to the heart. And that's why I think portraits goes a long way to give us back confidence in human nature. This is a young nun in Bhutan. Besides 600 monks in our monastery in Sechen in Nepal, we have about 250 nuns in Bhutan in 2 monasteries, and they follow exactly the same cursus of philosophical study, of retreats than the monks. And so these are the younger nuns. A little girl in Tibet, after Mount Kailash, we went all the way near the Kashmir border to Tsaparang, and there was 100 kilometers with nothing. And then suddenly a small house saying tea and curd. And there was a couple with this little girl, and she had blue eyes. Probably, you know, there's some blue eyes in Ladakh, so it's not too far. And she was so beautiful and innocent. And then this is our Karuna girl. This is part of our Karuna projects in Tibet. I photographed her in a little kitchen of a clinic that we built. You probably know Steve McCurry's photos of the Afghani girl. And I played with, I know Steve, and I showed him. I also have a photo of this girl 10 years later, and she remained very beautiful. Why, you know, Steve lady, when she became elder, she didn't have the same sort of light in her gaze. He's a Tibetan doctor who was obviously neither a dentist nor an ophthalmologist. He has 2 pair of uncorrected glass on his nose, but he looks pretty happy. And this is part of our elderly people's program in Tibet. We have 6 places where we support elderly people, and they're pretty happy themselves. So we try to give them some help so that they have a more decent old age. And again, we can play with photography with different scales. You see this bark on a tree, and you can find some similar motifs in a colored mountain in Jujuy in Argentina, where there's a beautiful sort of coloration in the mountain. And then, you know, silhouettes on the salt lake, also in Argentina, or a lone meditator facing the Jomolari, which is 7,900 meters. So it happens to be me, so it's a selfless selfie. Because, you know, I was up there with a friend. It took 3 days to walk up there. So I saw that photo in my mind, but my friend had, you know, was dressed with, you know, blue jeans and things like that. So I thought better to have a red dot. So I composed the photo with him sitting on the rock, and I said, now we change place, and then when I say ho ho, you push the button. So, and then when I saw that photo, I almost discarded it. Say, well, what's it about? And finally, he did the cover of French National Geographic. So sometimes when you see the result, you are not sure whether it's a photo that will have something or not. So it takes time to edit those things. So some horsemen in Tibet, and people gathered in Bhutan. So again, play with the colors, with the composition. You have a lot of people, and then you have a lot of houses. And by the way, this is an interesting story as well, because this is the largest philosophical college or institution in human history, I believe. in that valley, there's only philosophical study, 10,000 people, 6,000 nuns, about 5,000 nuns, 1,000 lay people, including some Chinese, which lives in those tiny, tiny, tiny houses and gather into bigger halls to get teaching for 9 years of philosophical study. I never heard anywhere in the world a university with 10,000 students of doing 9 years of philosophy. And so this was under threat a few times. Sometimes the Chinese destroyed part of it, but it's always grow again because of the natural attraction there of people for studying. I photographed those little boys playing near my hermitage, and they saw me photographing, and they came to see me. They said, "Where's my photo? Where's my photo?" So I showed them that. They were very disappointed because they could not recognize themselves. Some monks. So then, of course, then you see again playing, painting with time and with light. So here the time is instant, while if you have movements, you have more time. So this is some monks rehearsing for the yearly Sacred Dance Festival, which is based on the lunar calendar. This year it will be there on 26th and 7th of March. So this very colorful, and this is a sharing with the population, the sort of meditation that is sort of shared outside in the form of costumes and dance, which are highly symbolic. And those dances are not meant to exacerbate emotion, like when you go to a nightclub, but to liberate by sight. Liberate by sight means to free those negative mental state into wisdom by participating in the ritual and looking at the sacred dances and so forth. So in Bhutan, people are very eager to come to those festivals. And then I took the monks for a few times for a tour in Europe. And then many of them had never seen the sea. So when they share the sea, I said, "Can you jump like you do in the courtyard of the monastery?" So the 7 monks jumped, and that time it was slide, so I could only take 2 photos because they jumped twice, but one of them was perfectly, and when I gave that to a photo agency, they said, what is called compounded photo. They thought I put 7 photos together. I said, "No, it's one slide. I can show you the slide, and there are 7 different monks, but the synchrony is like almost perfect." So that's also luck, when you take those things. So that's what I say, painting with time. So this is pause for me for half a second. So you see the movement becomes like a painting with light. What can I say? And so you can also play with shapes like round and blue, and you find the same motif in a little jellyfish. And then you find again a round and blue on a beautiful colored lake in Zhujiago at the border of Tibet and China, or reflection on the ocean, or the waterfall in Iceland. So you see the shapes, the movement, all the similarity. And then again, suddenly things, this doesn't last long. So I saw that once by the sea. I was just arriving there. So I put my things down and rushed to the seashore to take that image, because I knew that after 1 minute it would be gone. And then again, we play with the circle. And then you find the circle with this little hole in Canada, looking straight at me every night. At 6 o'clock, she will come out. It will come out and stare at me. So it was a wonderful subject. Or sometimes unexpected images. Like I look for many, many years in the Himalaya for this scene with many, 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 many sort of ranges following after one each other. And I could never get this kind of photo. I'd seen from other photographers in Ladakh, but I could never be there. And then one time I was flying down, I went to Santiago de Chile for some friends of Francisco, dear Francisco Varela, invited me there. And then when I came back, the French pilot said, "Oh, come in the cockpit for when we cross the Andes." So then I saw suddenly the photo. I've been looking everywhere in the Himalaya was just under my eyes while crossing the Andes from Santiago to Argentina. So again, this is a moment that doesn't last. Or this light in my hermitage, or something somewhere in the Himalayas, or a reflection in the lake. Oh, that's an interesting story about that. I've seen when I was young a wonderful image by Ansel Adams. He was one of the precursor of landscape photography, working with big chambers in black and white. He founded the Sierra Club. He was photographing in the national parks. And I've seen a photo of a reflection of a mountain in a still lake and with stones in the background. And it impressed me when I was a teenager. Then in Bhutan, I saw in a hotel a photo of that lake. I said, I must go there. But the only thing is about 3 days' work. It's much above the base camp of the Jomolari. So anyway, I went there with 2 friends, and we reached in the afternoon. So there was wind, so there was no ripples on the water, and there was no way to take this photo. So I said, I'm sleeping there. I said, you are crazy. There's nowhere there. We are almost 5,000 meters. We have nothing to eat. I said, you can go. I'm staying. And then finally, we found some nomads, and they gave us hospitality in a tent. And no wonder, next morning, early morning, the lake was like completely still, and the reflection was perfect, and the stones were in the background. So that's an homage to Ansel Adams. So you see also how the importance of inspiration from other photographers can be. And also, again, the light of the heart of people, and also playing with shapes. And so that's the photo I wanted on the cover initially. This is an ice cave in Iceland, and you can see the scale by looking at the small silhouette at the entrance of the cave. Those caves last for 2-3 months, then they collapse, so you have to go there at the right time. But somehow it was too complex, so we settled for that other image. So again, just to give you also a little background on the history of photography, because I mostly photograph in color. I think this book is also a kind of chromatic symphony. And photography was invented by, 5 people independently in the 19th century. 20 people claim to have invented photography, but there was 5 of them, 2 in England, 1 in France, even 1 in Brazil, with different processes invented photography. But those prints they made would last for 24 hours, then they will vanish. So obviously, if they could have invented photography in color, they would have done it. Rembrandt didn't paint in black and white. But it was already such a feat to manage to translate something that you see outside on the paper through this system that, for 30, 40 years, it was only black and white photography. So an art developed based on black and white. And of course, photographers like Cartier-Bresson and others, they say colors will be a distraction. And for them, it's true. No, they don't need colors. But at the same time, the world is in color. So there was one particular photographer which inspired me a lot called Ernst Haas. He was an Austrian. Then he went to New York and became sort of vice president of Magnum agency there. And then he was photographing black and white like everyone, in the early 60s. And then the first Kodachrome came in 1930, and all the professional great photographers said, no, that's just commercial, that's not for us. But then his assistant one then told him, because he started photographing in color, you have wonderful things there. Why don't you bring it together? So he did a show at the New York Photography sort of club. Robert Capa was there, and many people. And he announced, I'm going to show something in color. So the great consternation of everyone. And then as he showed his slides, everyone was in awe again. And at the end, Robert Capa stand up and start clapping. So basically, he broke the glass ceiling of color photography, and he did a book that became very famous called The Creation, which often I look again, and each photo I try to soak it in like water falling on dry earth. It really educates the way you look at it, look at things, and it educates the heart. And it was a very powerful source of inspiration for me. And he wrote beautifully about photography also. He said, color photography is not just black and white plus color, and the same way that black and white is not color minus colors. It's a different decisive moment. It's a different approach. Some photographs are much more powerful in black and white. Some just don't go in black and white at all. So let it be, you know. So in a way, he sort of, thanks to him, that somehow then color photography became well accepted. There was some resistance at the beginning. You know, it still looks very chic to photograph only in black and white, like in Paris. You know, if you are a color photographer, you still see you as an illustrator. But anyway, I think that time is gone. But for me, of course, I did 2 books in black and white, but mostly, you know, again, I love the colors of the world, so why not? So again, play with the scale, you know. So here before there was a bark in a tree, and you see the same motif in a big cliff in Iceland with the lava which is black and bright green moss on the lava. So, but you don't necessarily know what is the scale. Look at this river or this tree. So playing with the dimension, with the shapes like green, and again a selfless selfie. One time a French magazine asked me for the Woman Day to sell a selfie and a sentence. So I did that, and I sent a photo of an old man Tibetan man without tooth, and I said it's a selfless selfie. They, we don't understand what it means, but it's okay. And one of my other friends sent a photo of a cow, so we were on the same wavelength. So basically, that's about it. So what to say else? I could say that photography is my favorite way of being distracted from my practice, distracted from my translation, distracted from everything else. But at the same time, I truly, enjoy sharing the beauty of the world. I hope that this idea of giving back confidence in our common humanity. We got the Mind and Life, one of the virtual meeting with His Holiness about our common humanity at time of uncertainties. And then the wonderment about the world when the world is so much in danger because generation, they will say you knew and yet you did nothing. And obviously you can see now the almost certain failure of the new COP meeting. It's amazing that we are determining the fate of so many generations to come. Some philosophers said future generations don't have rights because it's a very individualistic conception of rights, that to have a right, you must be aware of your rights and reciprocate. Well, that's fine if you are living in society, but that doesn't work for future generations because they don't exist. So they're obviously not aware of their rights and they can't reciprocate. But they have a natural right not to suffer, and they will suffer for sure. So how can we say that they don't have the right not to suffer? And it's the same for other species. No, they cannot be aware of any rights, and they cannot reciprocate. Nevertheless, they have the basic right not to be inflicted unnecessary suffering, which is basically totally unjust and immoral. So I think we should really be aware of that. And the problem is, again, evolution equipped us to react to immediate danger. Now, if there is a fire in a theater hall, well, we all run. If someone said there will be a fire in 30 years, you say, well, we will see. But exactly what happens, 50 years ago, some scientists came to see George Bush, the father, and told him in 40 years we'll be in great trouble. And he said, basically, come back in 39 years. So because of that, once I did an editorial for a magazine, I think that was the Herald Tribune, I don't think it's existing anymore, saying the future doesn't hurt, not yet. So that's the problem. We need more than an emotional reaction. We need a cognitive reaction to take seriously in consideration the fate of future generation. My favorite Marxist is Groucho Marx. He said, why should I care for future generation? What did they do for me? Well, I heard Stephen Forbes saying the same thing about the rise of the ocean. He said on Fox News, I find absurd to change my behavior now for something happening in 100 years. So that guy probably no children, no grandchildren, or doesn't care a damn about them. So that's the thing. It's the ultimate challenge of the 21st century. Ultimate challenge to our altruism is to take seriously in consideration the fate of future generations. So in a very humble way, I hope that my efforts over the years to share those images might contribute to those two aspects, giving back confidence in human nature and generating wonderment about the beauty of our world. So sorry, I went certainly too far. I'm just a blah blah monk, but so I apologize for that, and thank you for your question. And so again, the book called Lumière, but the text is both in English and French. So if you are vaguely interested, you can get it somewhere on Amazon or whatever it is.
A heartfelt thanks to you, Matthieu, and you're getting so many thanks also in the chat. And we did put the information about your book early on in the chat, so if you didn't see it, you can go up. Our communications manager, Kat, she posted where you can find the book. So thank you once again for this exquisite odyssey you've taken us on. And we have just under a half an hour now for questions, for dialogue. So if you'd like, we just ask that you raise your hand so we can see you, preferably your virtual hand, so you come to the front of the room. And then we'll just ask you to unmute yourself if you have a question or a comment, and then you can engage in dialogue with Matthieu. And if you're not able to unmute yourself, you can, of course, put your question in the chat. So I see we've got a couple of questions already. So Annie, do you want to start us off?
Yes. Bonjour, Matthieu.
Bonjour.
Well, I have a new life in photography when the smartphone came, because instant, no cost, okay. And then I became aware that taking photos was a Dzogchen practice, introduction to the nature of mind, and I discovered, and this is what I want to share with you, that there is a path which was developed by Chogyam Trungpa, which is called Miksang, which is a teaching of, it's a Shambhala, which means a secular version of Buddhism, when we learn to develop that. And I'll put the name in the chat, and you can train. It's not just going to all the wonderful places in the world. You do that in your neighborhood, and there's stages. You take seminar 1, 2, 3, and so on. There are levels there. So if you're interested, if you're really to learn that, for me, it was extremely beneficial. So I'll put some information for everybody on that. Thank you so much for the travel.
Thank you.
I'm living like an hermit in Paris, so at least, thank you for taking us all over the world. I appreciate it. Okay,
Thank you,
thank you.
Annie. Thank you.
Au revoir, Matthieu. À bientôt.
Salut.
Thank you, Annie. Laura, and maybe we can, if you want to stop your screen sharing, Matthieu, so we can see everyone, whoever raises their hand in the room.
Okay.
Okay, so
Go ahead, Laura.
thank you. I'm very moved and amazed. It's fantastic. So really, thank you very much. So I was thinking about what you said at some point at the beginning, that there is this mirror-like wisdom that helps us to transform jealousy, and just having the mirror and you see the Buddha nature, and so everybody is equal, and so there is no jealousy anymore. And so I was thinking that also a camera has a mirror inside. And I don't know, I'm not a photographer, but I started to think about that. And so the question was like, how can a camera and a photographer be or work as a mirror, because you can just create copies. A reflection can be copies, but what you showed us were not copies. There was something more, like some transformation and creativity there that allowed us to see that. And very often you were also speaking in terms of playfulness, fun, play, so making it very light. So I was thinking more like in terms of what kind of virtues are needed from the side of the photographer or the camera, the mirror, so to see that and not to just be in a mere copy.
Well, thank you so much. I try also not to try to put too much in the same bag. I know photography, is my sort of more than hobby. I think it's something that I learned to do since I'm 13 years old. I had a great friend who was one of the first pioneer of nature photography and animal photography in France, who taught me when I was 14, 15. So I know somehow it's a kind of a distraction, and I should better stay in my hermitage and not do those things. So I'm not trying to, by all means, say, this is my part and make a whole kind of sophisticated excuse to take photographies. But since I'm doing it anyway, and I have this background and this inspiration, of course, taking the spiritual teacher, that's 100%, I think, is valuable. The rest, I hope it contributes to something, but, I don't want to put too much on it, saying, blah, blah, blah. Also the question, whether it's an art or not. Ernst Haas said, people ask whether photography is an art, and I don't understand the question. And in a way, if you look at the history of photography, at the time of when it came out, the great painter Ingres, I don't know how you pronounce it in English, he signed a petition that for many painters, I said, to state that photography is not an art, should not be considered an art. And then the year after, he said, well, photography is better than drawing, but we should not say it. So anyway, whether it's art or not doesn't matter. I try to look at the definition of art, and there's about hundreds of them anyway. So it doesn't matter, provided it rejoices people, it inspires people. I mean, seeing photographs inspire me when I see many of my colleagues. So anyway, we should not try to make it too much of it. But since we do things, we dance, we sing, we paint, we do something. So why not trying to infuse it with a little more meaning, without being too pedantic and saying, this is my part and I'm going to get enlightened like that. Certainly not. But there's much better ways, and I'm still working at it at the very beginning of the path. But anyway, something to share, to bring some joy, and if better than nothing.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Laura. Thank you. Bev, would you like to unmute yourself?
Yeah, thank you so much. First of all, I'm currently reading Notebooks of a Wandering Monk, and it's just amazing. So thank you for that as well. I have enjoyed photography throughout my life, and most recently, I'm only doing digital photography. I have boxes and boxes filled with photographs and things and I'm kind of worried that I have too much stuff, and how can I cull through and maybe perhaps even as a practice of discarding photographs that aren't as pretty or don't have as much meaning, or what practice do you go through when you're kind of deciding what to keep and what not to keep?
So first of all, I did photograph when I was a teenager, and obviously I didn't have much funds. And then when I left for Darjeeling, I had even less funds. The secretary of my boss, François Jacob, let my CNRS salary run for 6 months. And with that, I stayed 7 years in Darjeeling, basically spending the equivalent of $50 a month. So photography was really a luxury. It was used Kodachromes, used to send them to Bombay. They will come after 1 month, in that little yellow package. So I could afford only about 10 rolls a year. And I was not moving very much, taking portraits of my teacher. So every photograph, every shot was very precious. So, but still, at that time, I was just a beginner. And Cartier-Bresson said also, the first 10,000 photography, just throw them out. So I have a friend who is a cartoonist, and he made a nice drawing of me saying, oh, I'm on the 10,001, so I'm making a selfie. So I think he told his wife, Martine Franck, who was also a great Magnum photographer, don't ever keep or show a photo that you don't want to be seen by others or published. So, when I was doing slides, I didn't want to waste, so I was very minimalist. And then digital photography was more like a liberation because I could experiment, do crazy things at night and all kinds of things. So I really progressed a lot since 2000 when I started. But I do throw about 90% of what I do because I don't want to keep things which I'm not happy with. So it's a different way of doing it. And you still have to be very selective. So about all slides, you can scan them or whatever, but no need to keep things that you don't want necessarily others to see. There's no need to have a sentimental attachment to all. So of course there are historical photos. Now I'm going to archive everything connected with Dilgo Khyentse Rinpoche and his heritage, so his life himself, and the place where he used to stay, and his lineage. So I have about, in my whole collection, 150,000 images and 40,000 on Himalayan art. So that's not, basically art photography, but it's a historical document. So next year I'm going to spend a few months, if I'm still alive, trying to archive all that, and the Satra Foundation agreed to put it on a server so people can download them if they need, if they are interested. It's a bit like what they did for Trungpa Rinpoche's archive, which is a beautiful work. So we have 700 hours of recordings I made of Khyentse Rinpoche's voice. We have 100 hours of video. We have thousands of images. And so I think to preserve that for future generation have some value. So there's all these aspects mixed together, you see. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. We still have a little bit time for some more questions. If you'd like, feel free. And as we're waiting maybe for the next question, maybe Matthieu, we could draw you out a little bit on this question of how your practice of photography, if you see it in an ethical regard, what would you say the ethics of your particular practice are in relation to the world at hand, in relation to the encounter with place, the encounter with people, the deployment of a certain gaze, a certain regard on the world? How would you sort of start to talk about that aspect of
You
your
mean
practice?
like photographing suffering and abuse and all that? No.
That could be, yeah.
Now
Maybe
you see,
question.
me again, I chose deliberately to show the better part of human beings. I saw photos of suffering of, in India, you have your lot. You don't have to go very far. For several years in the winter, I used to go to Old Delhi, in the very small, narrow lanes where you have traffic jams without cars, just people, bullock carts, rickshaws, and very, very poor. Those rickshaw wallahs, the tricycle. At night, they sleep on their rickshaw, they burn some cardboard and they sing. So I've seen a lot of suffering, sort of old Muslim women under the veil, white veil, because they are widows and begging in the street. Probably nobody ever sees their face. If they are beggars, that means they don't have family. So you could photograph that, and I understand that people need to photograph that to awaken consciousness about the plight of people. But I didn't feel to take that because that's not what I want to show. There's enough of those terrible images. One, I was invited to a photojournalism festival in France, which is quite famous, called Perpignan, Visa pour l'image. And there was the time of the Kosovo War. So there was 5 or 6 exhibits about Kosovo War. There was one about the drug addicts in Brooklyn, one about the mafia in Sicily. All of that was about suffering and, so there was 2 exhibitions which give some hope. So I thought, we need to balance that because the world is not everything bad as we think. So therefore, I chose deliberately to show the good side of human beings and nature. And so that's what I'm trying. No, in terms of portraits, I think this, we really need to have some sense of complicity with the people. In the Himalayas, I live there all the time. I know the people. In Tibet, we do a lot of things, like, we with Karuna session, which now celebrate its 25th year of activity this year. Now we have 500,000 people every year in India, Nepal, and Tibet. In Tibet, we had 80 different projects. We built 25 schools, 25 dispensary, 18 bridges. So I know everyone there. The people, the nomads, they know me, they know them. So when I take photos, it's like a play. I smile at them, they smile at me, and it's very sort of a complicity with them. So I mostly take portraits where I live in the Himalayas, where I know people, I'm familiar with them. We know each other, we trust each other. And so they can gaze at me with a full, openness and innocence. So recently I was in the Atacama Desert to distract myself again. So it's an amazing landscape. But the Bolivian and Chilean people, I don't know them, so I could feel immediately when I thought of taking some portrait that they didn't like that. They don't want to be, especially in Bolivia, in the high mountains. I asked politely one person, and she said no. And then my friend also, I was with two friends. Clearly, they don't want to take photo. Why should I force that? They will feel terrible to impose on them to take photos against their will. And so that's why I take mostly landscape in those places, and I take portraits where I live, when I know people, they know me. We have this kind of intimate relationship, and then it's really, as we said, the gaze is the opening to the window to the heart. So yes, I think there's some ethical aspect in a way, but I'm not sure I could make a whole discourse about it.
It's a large question, but what you're pointing to really comes through in your portraits. It's really.
But like Salgado, he was such an extraordinary photographer, and he was criticized somewhat in French, making beautiful photos about suffering because his photo was so striking by their artistic quality. But that's really mean to say that because he was so devoted to the plight of those gold miners in South America, of the migrants people who were suffering so much. So it was a call of despair to the world to intervene to help them. And just because of the photographs are strikingly artistic and beautiful, they were making these arguments against him. That's really ridiculous. I mean, you could ask those people, what do you do for humanity, yourself? Well, it's easy to criticize, but it's unfair. And I met many war photographers, they suffer so much to take what they take. They cannot intervene. And many of them are broken, but at the same time, we need to share that to alert the world on those tragedies.
Thank you. Aude, I think your hand is up. Do you want to unmute yourself?
Bonjour Matthieu. Hello, everybody.
Bonjour.
Thank you so much for these beautiful photographies. One of the questions, as I heard you speak, and especially in the beginning, you were talking about acuity, and were you referencing to Cartier-Bresson talking about his increased acuity? I'm not sure, but the question is about your unique position. So you've been taking photographies for decades, and you've been practicing a practicing monk for decades as well. So your process must have changed, and I assume they're informing one another. And I was very curious to hear about how your process has changed, perhaps in light of your practice, your spiritual practice.
Well, living with those great masters led me to take that decision of showing the better part of humanity, awareness about other species, and showing the beauty of interdependence of the world and wonderment, which again makes you feel the interdependence of things and goes beyond feeling of loneliness, which is a very, very deleterious mental state when it's involuntary loneliness. So in a way, yes, my teachers and the teachings have inspired and directed the photography I take in a certain direction. I don't think that my photography influenced my spiritual life, but certainly you cannot sort of separate the whole part of a human being from doing what he or she does, and photography somehow is attuned to the values of what I received from my teacher without making such a making a big fuss about it. But I try to that at least there's no opposition or discrepancy or incoherence in doing that, and then the rest of my life as a Buddhist monk and a disciple of my teachers. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ed. So we have time for just 2 more questions. So the 2 that are in the queue right now with your hands raised, we'll take your questions before we close. Just a few minutes. So Cecilia.
Hello, thank you so much. I'm tuning in from Texas in the United States. I actually added my photograph as a background to share. I love how you're playing with shapes, and really photography is fascinating because you can bend time in different ways. And I think that nature exists on a different type of time than we do. So I've been enjoying sort of trying new ways to depict that. And I think what you spoke about our crisis of connection to the earth. I think most of our world is designed in a human-centered way to serve us rather than to serve nature. So by photographing nature, I think it's a real gift where we show, we have an opportunity to show the inner light of a flower or of a tree or of a mountain. So thank you for your practice and sharing.
Yeah, well, there's an Indian photographer, I forgot his name, but he's a wonderful nature photographer. And I saw recently some of his quotes. And he said, first I photograph with my heart, then with my eyes, and third with the camera. But if it doesn't start with photographing with the heart, that means being moved by what you see, the beauty of what you see, then it's not going to work, You cannot go just around shooting everything and hoping that something nice will come out, yes.
Yeah, absolutely. I love what Anne shared too about mixing. One of the best compliments I ever got on a photograph is someone said, "Oh, like that's when you're in such a headspace where the photograph finds you. It's something filtered through your mind and heart as well."
Sure.
Thank you.
Well, the great painter Joan Miro said there are some images that you see every day and then you don't never think about it, and some images you see for a few seconds and you remember them all your life. So I think that's what some of our other great photographers, sometimes I see their images and it's still present in my mind and still sort of nourish the way of seeing things, and that's how you educate your sight, and then you start see things differently, and you can see immediately somewhere in the little corner of the landscape there's something beautiful that you might have not noticed before. Yeah.
Thank you. So our last question is from Matthieu. Please unmute yourself.
Yes, thank you. Hello, Matthieu.
Hello.
The question was Cecilia is a little bit. I'm taking from that because as you were saying, there are pictures that you are taking which was really enlightening you, and you're touched by your heart, and I was wondering if there has been moments that you have been enlightened by a scene, a portrait or a person or a landscape where you preferred not to take the picture but stay contemplate.
No. Well, of course, with the teachers, you would rather stay without taking photos, but sometimes you think, well, if I don't, who will do? when you live
Okay.
in their intimacy. But it's not, no, sometimes you feel, better, you'll be better not to take photos. But then when I see, all my photos have been pirated all over Tibet and sold on the marketplace, and everybody enjoyed them, so I'm very happy. So otherwise, no, why should I not take a, a landscape to keep it just for me? I don't want you to see that. But there's a great French photographer, Marc Ribot. He was a Magnum photographer. He said, one day I will do a book with all the photography I didn't take. So the only time I didn't take the photography is because I didn't have a camera. But I
Okay.
remember one of those, the first photography of a book that a photo I didn't take, and I was in Calcutta. That time there was some horse carriage, as they working as taxi. They called tunga, and those poor horses were suffering so much because they were caught in traffic, working hard all day long, pulling those kind of cart with people, 5, 6 people on it, and sometimes they had wounds, so it was very difficult. So one day, I saw passing in front of me one guy pulling himself the tunga, that chariot, and with the horse on the string following up.
Okay.
So that, I thought that's such a nice photo I didn't take. It would have been a Cartier-Bresson photo, the guy pulling the cart and the horse following on the string. But one time in Tibet, I saw something almost like that. There was a horse race, and after the race, there was 2 guys on a motorbike and the horse following with a core, but it was not as good. So anyway,
Okay.
no, when there's something beautiful, I do take it if I have my camera, and I love to share it, yes.
Thank you very much for sharing.
Okay. So thank you, everyone.
So thank you from all of us at Mind in Life Europe. Matthieu, thank you so much. And I think we all join our hands in clapping for this really exquisite
And
meditation.
bye-bye, good friends. Some of I know, some I don't know.
Yes, thank
Again,
you.
bye-bye, Amy. Bye-bye, John. Bye-bye, everyone. I don't know if you're still here.
Bye, bye.
Patient enough with this old guy.
Thank
Okay, take care.
Good care. Thank you so much.
Hope to see you within this life. If not, who knows? Okay, bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Bye. I think we have a couple of announcements if anyone is going to stay after this of upcoming programming. So those of us who joined us this evening, you're welcome to join us for any of our programs coming up. We have actually a contemplative session, practice session next Tuesday. We have a podcast release next Thursday with Jane Hirschfield. Our next Emily Friends talk, you can see, is on Thursday, the 27th of November, with one of our researchers, a scientist from our community. And we would very much like to encourage people to take a look at a very large-scale collaboration we're going to undertake next year in Barcelona, an international conference called Power and Care, Enactive Approaches and Critical Social Philosophy. So the call for papers and posters is open until November 30th, and people can register as general attendees up until the conference in May, which will be May 27th to the 30th. So we really look forward to seeing many of you there or online in our online programming this month. So that's all from us at Mind in Life Europe, but please do come back to our online space. And thank you once again, Matthieu. We hope that you will also come back to our online space very soon. Really appreciate your presence tonight. Thank you. Be well.